So this is going to be a quick lesson to just practice building a project from scratch, artificial intelligence, and start to get to know all the commands and different features that we're going to be using to do so, and then build on those skills. So in this project, I just have created a plane, 3D plane. I have a player as a capsule and a enemy as a sphere. I haven't put any color or anything on here, or textures or anything yet. Basically just going to be fooling around with some of the commands and stuff, and then we'll go from there. So of course, if you're going to be using the new Unity 2022 and using artificial intelligence, you have to make sure that you have in your package manager AI navigation, and the new Unity input system. You may have to restart your computer or restart your project to get the input system to load, because sometimes it just simply doesn't load. Yeah, so you may have to do that, just so you know. So you want to download those, and then we're going to put a nav mesh surface on our ground. So we're going to go game object, and this may vary from where you see it. Sometimes it's here, sometimes the first time it's down here, but under game object AI nav mesh surface. So I already have one. It looks like I've turned the surface off, so I'm not looking at it. So if once we click on it and we go here, we can then see that nav mesh surface. There it is. And make sure you bake it. So whenever you make a change on the nav mesh surface, because it's changing the way your player or enemy objects react when they're on the surface, you got to make sure you bake it so that it takes those changes. I then went to my player, and I added a rigid body to my player. Component physics, make sure you get the 3D rigid body, not the... There's a 2D one in here also, so make sure you're not getting that one. And I added the player input, so that means that component, and there's player input. So for mine, you're going to see a button down here that said create, and I typed in player movement. That's going to be used in my script, so whatever you type inside there when you create this, make sure you either use player movement, or whatever you type in, make sure you're going to change the script when I start using it. I put a nav mesh agent on, so that's down here. Nav mesh agent, and I made sure it's humanoid. So for this particular game, because we're all just using the same surface, my surface is going to be humanoid. My player is nav mesh agent is going to be humanoid, and my enemy is going to be humanoid also. Okay, so all of those are humanoid. It probably is not going to work if you don't do that. We will fool around with having another surface on for maybe just the enemy, but for this particular project, make sure everything's humanoid. Okay, so I want my enemy to go to my player, and I think this is pretty disorganized right now, so I should have a scripts folder, and let me move this in there. Okay, so on my enemy, and I probably name these all player move too, which I need to change. I have player move. Okay, so I'm presuming it's this one. So this is going to have the enemy move to the player. I know it says player move, but it's moving to the player. So make sure when you're using these scripts for artificial intelligence or Unity input system, you got to add this line so Unity knows we're doing this. If not, you're going to get an error message. So we're using a serialized field, private, like game object, that we're going to fill with the player. So we don't want to be able to change it, but we do want to fill it with the player, and we're using our nav mesh agent. So we're going to call it this. So make sure these are spelled differently on purpose. So make sure you get that right. So these sort of reverse position is good because this is going to be the designated term. So it goes here and it goes here. But you'll notice the command going to go there. So anyway, when the game starts, we want to get the nav mesh agent to get both those nav mesh agents. So we're getting the position on the surface for both the enemy and the player. And then the enemy is going to move and follow the player. Wherever the player goes, the enemy is going to go to the player. So that's what this script is doing. Save it, and even though it says player move, make sure it's going on. I'm sorry, going on the enemy. Close this. So it's going on the enemy, and this is that serialized private field we're going to have. You're going to drag the player and fill this spot. So it's serialized and private, meaning we can't type anything in here. We have to fill it by dragging something over. We don't want them trying to type something. So once that game starts, wherever your player is, the enemy is going to go right to it. So that's that script. And then for my player, I have movement script. So let's go to that one. And again, I'm using the input system. So make sure you type this line 4 in. And if you're new to Unity, if you're ever going to copy a script or work with somebody, you start doing that here. Do not change any of this. Definitely don't change the name. So if they give you a script you're trying, or if you're going to try a script that you wrote and you want to see if it works, you start, after you create the new script, make sure you start pasting here under this first curly bracket. So we've got our player input. Remember, this is what I used in my game. And I created a float to control it. The first script I had didn't have any way for me to control the speed, so I went ahead and added a public variable, and of course one that we can change in the game. This is public, not serialized or private, so I can change it, and it's a float because it's a decimal. And we're going to get that player input when the game starts. Player input, the one I named for my input system, and then I'm going to use the player input of move. And if you remember, there's my move right there. So that's what I'm typing for. I'm using the move command of the input system. And movement. Okay, so I'm using that. I've wrote a function down here. I mean, I could have put in void update. This keeps it cleaner. So we wrote our own function here, and then we're calling it in void update. And it's going to be updated every frame. So we're getting the direction. We're moving. Using either the WASD keys or the arrow keys, and when we move, we're going to transform, either going left and right or forwards and backwards. So we're not going up or down. I know it's confusing with this Y here, because from those of you that are used to the math coordinate system, Y is like the other variable here, but it goes X, Y, Z. X, Y, Z, but in this case, because it's a 3D model, Y a lot of times is for Z. It's the Z position. So we're using Y, even though the Y axis up and down is not being used. So this way we can control the speed. Time.delta time means no matter how fast or how slow their computer is, or their system, it should be playing about the same speed. So I have super fast computers in my lab. A lot of times my students build a game and they can barely even, they push the mouse button or the arrow keys and it takes off. And that's the more you need to go put that delta time in there. So save that. That goes on our player. And I made my speed 10, whatever you want inside there. You can put 10.5 because we made it a float. And it will then play. So that way I'm moving left and right. And everything seems to be working fine. In the next lesson, I'm going to go ahead and put a camera follows on my player so that I can follow it. and then we're going to start adding to it. Oh, one other thing, if you're just new to Unity, make sure when you're building your game you pay close attention to this blue arrow. Notice what position it's going. This is forward. My player, this is forward. My enemy, this is forward. My camera, it's all forward. Make sure you have that set. If you start building a game and you're looking at it this way and you start extending your ground out this way, it's not going to work. Your forward's not going to be forward. And by the way, I should rename this. So when we have terms in here, make sure you rename them. Don't leave them cube or anything else. Ground, player, enemy, whatever you want to call them, but make sure they're not called cube or sphere or something. And also, if you have a bunch of objects in here, we'll probably do this next time, make sure you create an empty game object and you drag them in. So if I have like fences and there's like 50 of them, I'm going to create an empty game object and drag them in, and then I can open it when I want to. But it doesn't make this look busy. Like this is too busy. So what I would do is these are all scenes. So I would drag these scenes in here. And that would clean it up. So get yourself a folder and just drag everything inside here, like where my scripts are. And I don't know why player movement's inside there. That should be in there. There we go. Keep it clean. Anyway, any questions, let me know. If you're in my classes, make sure you build and run this in itch.io and submit your link.